I am Diptonil Chain and I will be your host for this exciting session. Today's session is all about something that quietly defines how we experience technology, App UX 101. We'll begin with a short introduction to App UX and its importance in today's digital world. Up next, we have a keynote session by our guest speaker, Mr. Tamim Iqbal, who will share his insights, experiences, and lessons from his journey in UX design. After that, we'll move into an interactive Q&A. So make sure to have your questions ready and we'll have a fun quiz and a few exciting surprises for our participants. And in the end, do not forget to fill our feedback form. A little bonus from our side, a few lucky participants from today's session will receive a free registration to our upcoming event UI-HEIST. Our speaker today is someone who brings a perfect blend of creativity and logic to the world of design. Tamim Iqbal is a senior UX design at COZEVA Applied Research Works Inc., where he focuses on simplifying and enhancing healthcare experiences through user-centric design. With a background in software engineering, Tamim combines technical understanding with creative vision to craft products that are intuitive, impactful, and meaningful. His design philosophy balances user needs, technical feasibility, and business goals to drive innovation that matters. Today, he will take us through the fundamentals of App UX, sharing lessons and insights from his professional journey. Tamimda, the platform is all yours.
Hey there, thanks. Uh, I think I should turn on the video. Let's see. Can you see me?
Yeah, yeah.
Great. Um, Share my screen. Yeah. Let me know if it's visible.
Yeah, it's visible.
Great, great, great. So, hey guys, I am Tamim. So, welcome to the session called App UX 101. But this is just a name. This is practically going to be a session on mostly UX, what is UX and how UX is used in apps, and what are some key takeaways that you need to keep in mind while designing the products. And we'll get into some things that are not usually talked about and are lost in the like standard design processes. So, one thing I would like to know before I start, so are you most of you like college students or like any of one of you are like working professionals or experienced in this field?
Maximum of them are college students. Yeah.
Great, great, great. Okay. Basically, that's how I'll try to keep it like as understandable as possible for everyone accordingly. So great. Okay. Let's move on. So hey, this is me. I am Tamim. Deeptonil gave a small introduction about me, but I'll just take short 1 minute of like talking about me. So right now I'm a senior UX designer at COZEVA. COZEVA is a healthcare product that is used to manage patient health data in US. Other than that, I am also a designer advocate at Friends of Figma, Kolkata. But yeah, I did not study design or anything, mostly a self-taught UX designer. I started as a software engineer and like probably have a similar background as all of you. So yeah. So started as a software engineer in Salesforce and then I was like, yeah, this is not for me and design is what I truly found passionate about. So decided to teach myself UX design and made the move and switch. So yeah, that's pretty much about it. Nothing major. So yeah, going into UX app is like what makes an app good? Like, uh, okay, just a quick question. Like, is this going to be like interactive or should I just say things from my end? Deeptani?
If you want it to be interactive, you can ask questions and people can
Great,
respond to them
great,
in the chat.
great, great, great. So, what makes a good app? So, any one of you want to give a shot?
It should be user friendly.
Mm-hmm. Anything else? Okay, great. I'll just go ahead. So, when we are designing an app, we need better visuals and easy to use. Great. Yeah. So, when we are making an app, our primary focus first should be to solve the problem before proceeding with anything. Like, whatever we are building, we need to make sure that, okay, user has this problem and we are trying to solve this problem with our solution. And next we go into like how we are building the app. So is the app easy to use? Like, can they, like, if you give it to a person and do not tell him anything about it, can he figure out the way through the app? Can he understand what the app is supposed to do? Or like, what are the steps that he needs to take? Or how to just move throughout the app? Navigation is like a very key crucial thing when you're designing a product, and mostly it is impacted and pretty easy to understand, build when you're designing mobile apps. It gets a little bit more complex when you're designing SaaS products and desktop enterprise grade apps, but that I'll get into later. Is it useful? Yeah. So let's say you make an app, like everyone has an idea, right? So you make an app, looks beautiful, like great, and it sounds very good in a hypothetical sense, but are the apps being useful by any users? Like, are users finding it useful, or is it solving a real world problem? If not, no matter how good your app is, how good UX it is, if it is not useful to the user, they will probably not use it. Because like, there have been like a lot of products that has launched in like past 5 years, and some of them were like pretty good products, but not all of the products could stand the market and time. And finally, is it enjoyable? Now this is not very thing something very straight. Enjoyable depends on the kind of product you're building and the kind of audience you're building in for, right? So if you're building it for an enterprise grade or like professionals, businesses, they don't need to enjoy the product that much, right? They need to get work done, they need to complete tasks, and that is. But yeah, definitely the amount of friction they have while doing those tasks and all, those things can be minimized. But yeah, enjoyable is not something you put there. But okay, is it enjoyable? So where does this come into play? This enjoyability factor comes mostly into play when we are designing phone apps. So our attention spans have pretty much decreased a lot in the past couple of years for the short form content we are consuming on a daily basis. So getting the user hooked is a very crucial task when designing phone apps, because a user is constantly looking at their phone throughout, and if they do not have that kick, if you cannot hook the user, they'll probably not be interested in using the app. So that is where the enjoyability factor comes into play. So how do we make our app enjoyable? There are apps where you will see which use things like gamifications and like colorful visual and reinforcing the user that yeah, you did the task, you completed this. Like, I'll give you an example. Right now we have a like really good example of Duolingo, which is like one of my favorite apps in terms of UX design. Like, it is built like really strong in terms of fundamental UX and gamification. So yeah, every time you take an action in Duolingo, you'll see the app reinforces you, like you like makes you feel like you achieved something, you accomplished something, and that gives you that kick, that gives you the reward. The reward is what makes the user keep going on and on and on. Rewards are something that will keep your user hooked onto that. And also, like, depends on how you're designing the reward. The reward should make the user feel that yes, I have got something, I have achieved something. This is Duolingo. At every stage where you do Duolingo, it constantly like affirms you with like small tokens and rewards, like banners, interactions, gives you coins, give you small things that unlocks, such that. But I'll give you another example. So we, most of us use like Google Pay or some sort of payment app, right? Or Amazon Pay or whatever. So When we make a payment, you will notice that it gives you a scratch card. And most of the time, the scratch card is like not even very useful. It After we scratch it, most of the time it just ends up in a bin of all the scratch cards. But still, like, that's one small thing keeps you hooked and makes you feel nice that we are not really aware of how it is affecting our mind or how it is making us feel rewarded, but it is definitely there. So whenever that scratch card pops up after you make the payment, it makes you smile. And that is what good user experience is all about. It makes you feel rewarded, even though the reward is probably meaningless, probably not going to be used by most people, but still it gives you a sense of reward, and that is what makes you your app feel enjoyable. And this is something you can build in like almost any kind of solution you're designing when it comes to mobile UX. In desktop, these kind of things are a little bit difficult when you're designing for SaaS products, which I'll not go to because that will probably be more confusing for you all. So I'll just stick to mobile products. So whenever you're designing to GPay Laddu, yeah, definitely those things. Yeah, that is also one thing. Like the gamification, GPay has like a multi layers of reward system. So the scratch card is one of them, and they used gamification to keep users coming back to the app, so that the more the user uses the app, the more they'll be comfortable and they'll probably not want to go anywhere else, right? GPay do. Yeah, they do. So that is it. So when you're building a product, how can you hook the users? How can you make the things enjoyable? So let's say you have a flow and you are trying to basically make them complete any task. So after you make them complete any task, you give them like a small interaction, a small animation of reaffirming that you did it. Something similar to how we place an order in Swiggy. They just reaffirm you like like wow, like you ordered something, like that's such a great thing. But it's just like we have placed an order, but the way they show it, the way they present it with interactions, that is what makes you stand out. Yes, nothing OS is one of them. It has a like lot of micro interactions that reinforms the user and like triggers the reward system. The more the more properly you can trigger the user's reward system, the more they'll enjoy and the more they'll like want to stay on the app and keep using it. But okay, like we sticked on this slide for a long time and we talked about something. So let's get a little bit deeper. So when you're designing an app, you need to keep certain things in mind in order to have like a solid foundation for the app, right? So if your the foundation of your app that you're building is not solid, it's highly likely that something will feel off, or when using the app or product something will just feel not right, and that will result in drop rates. What is drop rates? Basically, when your user is using the app and is just tired of using the app and they just drop off, so the number of users you have for your app, that will decrease. So drop rate it is also like a key metric we use to measure like performance of our UX. But okay, not going there. So you want to prevent your drop rate, and in order to prevent, like, you need to build like a very like strong foundation for UX in whatever you are building. So how do we get that? Basically, use good design principles, good design fundamentals in order to build this. So here we have like four pillars of good design that I came up with. So consistency. So you have noticed like we use apps and like do the buttons and menus and where they are, expect them, right? So when we are using apps, certain things are placed at very specific positions and nowhere else, right? So the fav icon or the profile section you'll see on most apps are on the top right. Why? Because the user is used to having to see that on the top right. So if you are making an unconventional move of moving it somewhere else, it might cause the use an issue, and then they might find it confusing. The menus and buttons, the buttons that you design for your app, make sure like they are consistent throughout the app. Like the padding, the style, it shouldn't change. It should like be very solid throughout the app. Like if your button keeps changing, like somewhere you're using round buttons, somewhere you're using square buttons, somewhere your buttons have shadow, if there's an inconsistency in your app, in these UI elements, then it will just make the user feel off, and it will not feel like a strong product. It will feel like you have taken too many things from different places and just slapped it on to one thing. So this is something you definitely want to avoid. Next goes to hierarchy. Hierarchy is one of the most underrated things that people miss, and it is very easy to miss. Hierarchy is like how the content of your site is presented and how it flows. So the way you arrange the content on your site will define like how the user's eye will guide throughout the app. Certain things are placed on the top. So when the user opens something, we read from top to bottom in like a very F pattern. So in that way, certain things are placed on the top. So the app designer wants the user to see the things at the top. Example is like for, let's say, shopping apps or Instagram. Okay, so when you see advertisement banners, they are usually kept at the top. Why? Because we want to grab the attention of the user at once. And okay, that's a bad example. I'll give you something else. Like hierarchy, what can I say? Okay, so like how UI elements are presented in your app, that continue watching for Netflix. Yeah, Netflix has a good hierarchy. So how UI elements are placed in your app, that defines the hierarchy, like how you have the stop header and how the navigations are there for desktop application. But when you come to the phone applications or phone based systems, like the same thing happens at the bottom. This also has something to do with UX, which I'll get to later. But yeah, how the content is arranged, like certain things are made big, certain things are made small. Things that are made big in terms of UI element, so the designer wants the user to see those things first, and then we can go to the small element. Large elements to small elements, how we read is basically like our eyes go first to large element, then the smaller ones, and then further down. So if you want a user to go through a certain flow in how they are solving or how they are going to do the task, that is something you can use. So let's say you have this massive banner where the user, you want the user to see first and then write something, and then the bottom you have a button. So the button is usually smaller than that UI element. So that is how the hierarchy of that screen will flow. And hierarchy is used in everywhere. If you see like big products, website, landing pages, everywhere. And hierarchy is something that can make or break a design. If the hierarchy if the hierarchy is strong, if there's a good contrast in your hierarchy, the product will automatically feel good without you even trying to explain it to anyone. Okay, next comes is feedback. So let's say you design something, like how do you know like this is working and this is not? Or you design a flow for a user. So you need to check with the user if they are able to do the task that you have designed for them. Like you need to check if like the actions you are making them take are working, or they are able to do it with ease, or if they are facing any issues. Like I'll give you a small example. So um, okay, let's say we are filling a form, right? There are a lot of fields like name, um, probably your occupation or whatever other fields, right? But let's say there are some fields where the user is confused, like what that field supposed to mean. So so that creates a friction and how the user will complete that task. So if a user is not able to understand what a field means, there's like a massive friction which will prevent them from filling the form, and that will just make them like feel like, okay, I don't want to fill the form. So how do we solve that? We solve that by putting tooltips. Tooltips is basically when you tap on that field, okay, something will pop up in the bottom explaining what that field is supposed to be, or what the user needs to feel, or the user needs to type in that field, something like that. So by the interaction, you're giving them more incentive to understand, you're giving them more feedback to understand how to feel the field. So all the actions that the user are taking must make some response, must give them some feedback, right? Another example is haptics. That is a very unconventional example, but okay, right? Haptics. Like before, haptics was not a very big thing in terms of mobile design, right? But now, as we go ahead with time, like we see like more and more app used haptics. If you see, like you press and hold, why do we implement that haptics? That gives the user a feedback. It makes the user feel like an actual keystroke when we press a button or something. Like it makes we are pressing like an actual button, not just tapping on the screen. So that is giving them a feedback. So a user having a feedback for every task or every action they are taking on the screen is very important. And that feedback is something that will reinforce them or reaffirm them that okay, the task that I'm doing is being useful. And last is clarity. So don't make the users think. Very easy thing. If you're designing something, don't overwhelm them with hundreds of options like Netflix does. Why Netflix does that is a different issue. But if you're trying to make them perform an action, uh, ideal cases like present like 3 to 5 UI elements in front of them and not more than that. It will probably confuse them if you have like too many things on your screen, and it will like prevent them from taking a decision. Same as physics wala app. Okay, I have not used that. So yeah, but it does make too many things does make the decision taking process difficult. And if the user needs if the user needs to make a decision, and if the user doesn't have much time, the user will just close the app. They will not probably go through it. Uh, Here in terms of, I said don't make the users think, but I said like Netflix does the opposite, right? So just coming to a little bit of real life example. So this is something called friction, and friction is something how hard you're making a user to do that task. So this can be identified as a dark pattern or maybe not, depending upon how you see things. Okay, but friction is how difficult you're trying to make doing a task. Like if you put like a small amount of friction, sometimes it can act as a feedback, and the user it might reaffirm the user, because like okay, I put in effort, I got the reward, so that might make it the user feel nice. But putting too much friction sometimes can make the user confused and just like make them not do the task. Like for example, Netflix like puts a lot of friction. So when you go on Netflix, you are just bombarded with a plethora of shows, a plethora of movies, too many things to see, and it makes you confused what you want to watch, right? But okay, what is the UX behind this? So what Netflix want is to for you to stay on their platform more. And the more you stay on their platform, the more you are likely to select things that you are going to watch and schedule things that you are going to watch later. So at the end of the day, they are just trying to increase the app usage time. Of course, you will definitely go and watch the movie or watch the TV show, but the friction that they are creating, they are kind of giving you too many options, which you probably end up as save as later and probably will go and watch in the future. But doesn't happen that doesn't happen with all of us. So here we have like four principles or pillars of good design that I explained. Here are some examples of real world product that are like very solid in terms of these UX principles or UX fundamentals that they have masters, and that is why they stand out so much from their competitors. For example, Uber. Uber has like a very strong design language. They do not play games. They just make you do the things. Their app is not very colorful. They don't want you to like be bombarded with rewards and stuff. Their app is very minimalistic. They want you to get the job done, and they deliver a pretty good experience. Discord, I don't know how many of you have used Discord. Anyone? Hand raise. Anyone who uses Discord? Oh wow, a lot of people use Discord. So yeah, so Discord is something like I started using since I was among us. Yeah. So Discord is something that I started using back in the college, and I had a problem that this app solved, which is like communicating while playing games. And before Discord, it was really difficult. Sometimes we used to have like a group call on Facebook. after that, there was this thing called TeamSpeak. I don't know if anyone of you have heard of it, so, which creates a server and you can like just go and join a call and play games together. But nothing else is really. Yeah, it is. Arnav really likes nothing else. So yeah, Discord solved this problem by letting you create a server where you and your friends can hop on, talk, play games, discuss, rant, all those things. And if you see the like how the UI of Discord is designed, it doesn't like go very minimal. It doesn't go very industrial. It goes like it makes like it is built for like Gen Z, and that is what I like really love about that app. Like it like knows its audience, and it's very bold in its like marketing and how it has designed itself. Netflix I talk about. Spotify also same. They solved a problem. They made like a very bold outcome of solving that problem, and now it's like widely used. Cred is also something like Uber that follows a very minimal design pattern, design style, but it's like very bold. Wants you to jump on the app and like just get there. I'm currently using it. Is fantastic. Okay, great. And so yeah, so Cred is also something that takes design to a different approach. They do not bombard you with a lot of colors, a lot of visual elements and stuff. Similar to Uber, keeps things minimal. Similar to Uber, keeps things minimal, and yeah, it is like a really solid app. And Airbnb, probably you have heard of it. Airbnb has like a insanely strong design system. They picked up a problem, they solved it, and now they are one of the leading in the market. We have time. Yeah, we are on time. So let's go. Okay. So we talked a lot about UX, right? And like what are the things that are important. Now let us come to you when like you're solving a UX problem. Now, like how do you approach? Like this is where I have like talking to like young people from college. I have figured out that this is where most people like have difficulty in like how do they approach a problem and how do they get on into solving the problems. This is something I wanted to talk about. So first, when you are solving a UX problem, right, you need to understand the problem more. Like you need to at least like spend 20% of the time understanding the problem, because just don't think of any solution, like not nothing. Okay, like just try to understand the problem and just feel how realistic the problem feels, because a lot of times we have problems in our head that are not very realistic and that are not very marketable. That is a problem probably just we face, and building something for it might be kind of impractical. So understanding the problem is like a very important task. Understanding the problem, user needs, and business goals. So okay, if you're building something for yourself, your friends, community, great. You just need to understand the user needs. That's it. The user is facing this problem, you need to validate it through different users. You need to understand and go to talk to users, and you need to ask them, okay, are you facing this problem? If yes, why are you facing the problem? What do you think can be done better? Questions like this, like how you ask the user questions and try to understand the need, also defines how you are going to frame that problem in your head. And finally we come to business goal. This is not something talked about very often, but this is also something really important. So, there, if you're solving a problem for a business, it needs to achieve a goal. If you are designing a landing page for a business, it needs to bring in more customers. If you are building an internal tool for developers, right? So it should improve developer productivity, which will improve the business and will allow them to work better. So business goals is also like very important, and like if your problems are aligned with the business goals, you just got it. You have a like solid problem statement to go from there. Okay, next thing is things in terms of flow and not screens. So I've seen like once we understand the problem and once we have defined a problem statement, we just think about designing screens. Like, okay, I'm going to build it like this. This here will be like the top header, here will be like the cards, here will be like the bottom navigation, the profile will go here, I'll place some buttons here. And we start thinking like that. But if you think like that, you are not going to design products that are going to be very scalable and consistent, right? You are just like approaching the very minor fundamental element of that solution. But if you just design, if you are thinking of the screen, you're kind of blocking yourself from understanding the entire flow of how the user is going to product. So I the best thing is, once you understand the problem, just avoid yourself from jumping into screens. That will come at last. Okay, so make flows. What are flows? So you understand the problem. Now you need to understand like how the user will solve this problem, or how you are going to solve this problem for the user, right? So what will they do first? What will they do next? How will they save the thing, or how will they end up at what they are? And then how will their journey complete of like the issue that they are facing with, right? So this is basically a flow. So very easy example I'm putting, like, okay, let's take a food ordering app, right? You search for a place, you go, after you get a list. From a list you select one restaurant. From a restaurant you have a, like, again, a list of items that you can order. Some things that are like on the top that are recommended, and some other things are at the bottom. Okay, so you decided like the things that you're going to eat. So next step is taking the decision. The decision is choosing what to order. So you add like two or three items to the cart. Next you go into probably the like confirmation page of, okay, these are the things that you have ordered. This is the price breakdown. Do you want to use a coupon code or not? Okay, and after that you do the payment and place the order. So this is a flow, and this is how we need to think when we are designing solution, not just screens and how things should look. Like, okay, what are the steps that a user is going to do in order to solve the problem, and trying to identify what are the difficulties that a user might face at each step, and how we can even make this flow smoother, or sometimes introducing friction that you can use very strategically to make even the user feel more rewarded, right? So once we are done with the flow, m- most of the cases you can design like a flow chart, or you can just design it on a pen on paper. Like, it's very easy, like, doesn't take much time. Once you have designed a proper flow, you will have the understanding of, okay, this is how the journey starts, this is how the journey ends for the problem that we are trying to solve. Okay, so now once you are clear with the flow, again, still do not go into designing screens because if you are if you just start with designing screen, it is not going to stay consistent. Next is something that is, again, most of us miss, is building a design system, or a style guide, or a design library, or whatever you want to call. Basically, this will be a repository of reusable components that you are going to use throughout your UI or throughout your product that you are going to build. This is very underrated and very important, because if you build a proper design system or a design library, the amount of time it takes you to design the screen is like reduced by one fourth. You do not go to each and every screen in the flow and make a button, or or like make a card, or make something like that. You design things one, you just put you just drag it and put it on your product. That's it. That's how simple it is. And making the changes also like becomes very easy. You don't have to go into each and every screen and change things. You just go to your design system, or the components that you have built, make the changes from there, and voila, everything is reflected on your product. So yeah, building a design system is very underrated, but like, I'll go into like design systems more in like a next slide. But yeah, design system is like how you start, like, the building process. Like, once the first two stages are like more of thinking process, design system is like more of a building process. So this is where you start building. So how do you start with a design system? Design system is mostly going to be like a set of reusable components that you're going to use throughout your design. So it will be components, and how you want to style your product, how you want the brand to feel, like how you want it to look, right? You can call it anything. Some people call it design system, some people call it design library, whatever. And finally, once you have your design system, your flow is there, your wireframe, your flow is there, like a rough idea of what the flow will look like, and how what are the actions that are going to be taken, that is there. and then you move on to the design. So once you build the design system, you are going to refer to the flow of what are going to be the reusable components. So you have already built it into your design system. Now, when you go to the final design, you're just going to take take those components and just put it onto your phone app screens. That's it. And depending on the actions the users are going to take, you'll just need to rearrange them and make them scalable. Building a design system is very important because when you're designing a product, right, if you want to make it scalable, if you want to like improve, enhance its usability, want to put in more features, scaling the app or product, this is where the design system comes in like really handy. Like you don't have to go and design each and every UI element for each and every screen. You are just like expanding upon the screen. You have reusable components you put there. You understand the logic. You arrange the logic and the UX, and you're done. You don't have to like think too much in terms of design there. So yeah, in final stage, you go into the screens and take the components that you have used. Probably most of them are reusable. Arrange them accordingly, how you have designed them in your flow, and there you go. Put the interactions, connect them into a prototype, and you're ready with your product to ship and test. Um, does this approach feel clear to people? Just wanted to know, because I went with like a very different way of approaching this solution. Like I personally am not a big fan of the like standard design thinking process. So yeah, I for each and every product that I build or each and every solution I build, I usually come up with a like customized flow for solving that problem. But yeah, this is very easy to understand and comprehensible for you to understand the problem and solve the UX problem. So can I get any hands, guys? You understood this? Mm, okay, great. Thank you. Just wanted to check. Okay, so super. Okay, great. Okay, so yeah, spoke a lot of about design system. Design system is like one of my favorite things. So, what are design systems basically? How do they look? So, I'll go deep into this because this is something if you understand once or you grasp once, like this is going to help in everywhere you go, or if you're into product design or even software engineering, like you get handovers from designers, right? This is going to be useful for you. So when building design system, like we define certain things, certain components, certain reusable things. Like when coding, we are defining variables or functions that are we are going to reuse, right? So on a similar note, here we are defining design tokens. So in terms of type or fonts, right? So what are the different font sizes that are going to be used, or what are the different font styles and size combinations that are going to be used? We can just we can like just define them as design tokens, so that every time we are designing, we don't have to go, okay, this font, this size, that. We just, okay, heading font, okay, uh card component font or button font, that's it. Like if you like define these tokens, when reusing them, it will be like very easy. Instead of going to like customize 3 or 4 parameters, you just go select whatever token you have planned for that element, and just one step. So cut down your like 50% probably. Colors. So when designing a design system, colors is very important, right? So you are building a product, your product has a brand, your brand has like a very specific look and feel and certain colors that you're using in the brand. So it is very useful to define that color, right? You don't want to go and like copy the hex code and every time paste that hex code, right? If you have like certain defined colors, you can just click on the element, select that color, done. Going into like changing RGB hex and these things are like very cumbersome. So what are the main colors of your design system? Those should be pretty much defined. Next we are going into, yeah, yeah, Notion does that. Next we are going to components. So the first part, design tokens, is this is more about styling. Components is more about like speaking in terms of like the sweet spot between like development and design. Like this is a very common thing for both developers and designers, right? Designers also design components, developers also design components. We are also reusing the components, and as a dev, they'll also be reusing the component. So in component, what the main reusable elements come into your places like buttons. Like buttons are everywhere, and how your primary action buttons should look for your app or the product you are building, that is going to be used throughout. You're going to probably use it like 10, 15 times. So like just defining it once and defining the different states of the button is very useful, right? So next are cards. Mobile interfaces are designed in such a way that everything is in the form of cards, and that is how things are, we are able to arrange those things in a reusable way when we are scaling from mobile to tab or tab to desktop, or let's just say just mobile, right? So we are flowing from top to bottom, and most of the things when you see apps are designed in terms of card. So once you design component, yeah, sorry, component, you have a doubt, Nadir? You can talk, so no issues. Nope. Okay. So components are basically okay. I think you might have a doubt with what the components are. So components are basically something that you can build on the design software that you're designing. So once you design a component, you can make child of the components, and basically you'll be using child of the components. There's a main component and there are child components. Child components are like reusable components, and the main component is something where you can go to make the changes and it will affect all the childs. So similar to how you have learned in object oriented programming, it's like a parent and a child relationship. So it makes things very modular, and it makes thing yeah, class object type, exactly. It makes things very modular, and it makes things very fast when you're trying to update your app or change the design or iterate on them. So yeah. Next comes the navigation. So how your user is going to move throughout the app, how they are going to communicate and reach different sections of the app is going to be very important, and that is where the navigation comes into play. Navigations are done in multiple ways. Some apps have menus, you'll see. Some apps have a bottom bar where they're like 4 to 5 elements. It's called dock. So dog based navigation is very useful because it is very one handed friendly. So the more the elements are at the bottom of the screen, the more it is useful for a user to use with one hand. So if you want to make a like very strong navigation system and you want the user to be able to use it just with one hand, design things at the bottom, because reaching things at the top of the screen becomes difficult. So yeah, navigation, you will like, your user will be able to like go through different sections of the scene, and more of like going to profiles, different parts of the app, going back to like where they started from, these things basically. So they are able to like fluidly, smoothly navigate throughout your app. If you have a good navigation, the user will have zero, I mean, frustrations when like using an app, because there are some apps where the navigation is very confusing and things do get frustrating sometimes. And finally comes this icon. Icons is where icons is like a very a little bit more advanced thing, but when it comes to like you guys designing things, I would recommend pick out a design system. Okay, like there are a lot of design systems available in Figma, and whatever icons you are using, use all the icons from one parent design system instead of like instead of just like using icons from wherever you get. What this happens is icons from one parent design system have a consistency. So throughout your product, there will be no inconsistency in terms of icon. Later, when you design icons on your own for a product, you will have to, you'll learn that how to make consistent icons and how all your icons will feel consistent. But right now, I don't think going into so much advance is necessary. So a key pointer can be very useful for your design journey. So whenever you're deciding to use icons for an app or a product or something solution you use, pick one design system, see if it has all the icons you need, and just stick to that. Do not mix and match icons from different design system. Like you take something from material and then you're going taking something from Microsoft Fluent design system or something, then you're taking from Salesforce. If you mix and match these things, your product will look very inconsistent in terms of icon, and that is like one small thing that can feel if your product is mature or not. if your product feels very consistent in terms of icon, your product will automatically start feeling mature. So yeah, that was most of the things about design systems. And here are some popular design systems that you can refer to if you want to learn more about design systems. These are some of my favorites. Atlassian is like a product based company. It's like a great product. You see Jira, Confluence, these are from Atlassian. So they have a like very mature design system. This Atlassian is mostly, this design system will mostly come into play if you want to look at SaaS based products or desktop or enterprise applications. Next is material design. Material design, you probably all have idea about like how things work on the Android world. So if you want to design things for Android, you can just go blindly and pick out things from material design system and just use them. Very consistent. Google has done a brilliant job. Base design system. So I was talking about how Uber is one of my most favorite apps, right? So Base is the design system that Uber has come up with, and that is, it is, I think, openly available also in Figma community. So if you want, you can just go into the Figma community, type Base design system, and actually see how Uber has built that design system. And finally, coming to Lightning design system, similar to Atlassian, Lightning is also by Salesforce, and Salesforce designs mostly enterprise and B2B applications. So this is very SaaS friendly, very SaaS focused. So if you want to work and design SaaS products down the line, Lightning and Atlassian are like your very good reference points. Okay, so next, accessibility, right? So talked a lot about things. Now coming to something very bare bone and necessary, which is going to make or break your product, is accessibility. Like whatever you're designing, like is it accessible to your users, right? Users can sense and comprehend content, right? So you have arranged content in your app, elements in your app, right? But is the user able to understand how you have arranged it? Is the user able to comprehend what they need to understand from how you have arranged it? That is very important. Are the text that you have put readable? Are the font sizes readable? Are the font and the background have enough contrast so that they can read the font? Things like that. So there is this thing called WCAG guidelines, so that defines web accessibility. So you can go and check that out. But yeah, how accessibility is like in terms of contrast, color, hierarchy, like size, like how the user is seeing the things and elements on the your screen and comprehending with their senses is very important. If they cannot like see it or if they cannot understand it, like I'll give you an example of how things can go wrong. So let's say you want to do like a ad. Okay, you're designing a table, right? And you want to make a ad row. Okay, but if you put a plus button at the bottom right, okay, that is just add. What is it adding? There is no clarity in it, right? So if you want to put an add row for that table, you have to position it properly where the user can understand that okay, this is where I can press to add row, along with like give them like a little bit of more clarity in terms of like a help text, like okay, you gave a plus button and you put add row next to it so that they get more clarity about what they are adding. Just put, I have seen this in a lot of places, like many apps do this. They design a screen, they just put a plus button, but just putting a plus button would not give you always the clarity of what you are adding. Okay, but there's a solution to this also. If you are trying to put an add functionality to something, when you are putting a plus button, something like that in your app, you can define like a make a custom icon where you make a small icon for that function and then put a plus button with the icon, integrate both of the two things together and put it as a button, just an icon button. Then it will be a lot more clear. So that is a workaround if you just want to put an icon and do not have text. Okay, I got into too much details. Okay, users can interact and navigate with all components. So I went into navigation, basically same thing. Like your user should be able to navigate throughout different sections of the app and navigate through the flow that they are trying to achieve when you're using the app. So there need right. So, and when navigating and when interacting, there are certain cases where there's a user intervention also, right? Where user needs to like stop, take a decision, right? For example, like I was telling you about like ordering of food, right? So there the user had to stop and take how many items that they wanted to order. Better with an indecision. Thanks. Oh, cool. Yeah. So in the interaction, so when they are ordering, they need to press the button plus button, and they need to choose like how many items they want to order, right? So that interaction is giving the a user input. Certain things we need to give a user another layer of input instead of just pressing buttons and cards, in order to give them like better clarity of how they are interacting with the product. For example, you have form fields, buttons, choosing dates. These are like interactable elements which we are using them to reinforce like their steps that they are taking into their flow, and not just making them press on cards and buttons. And users can clearly grasp how the interface works. Yeah. So how clearly you design the interface, how consistently you design the interface, how clean you keep it, how you maintain the hierarchy, it will give your product a very mature view, and how it will give them clarity in terms of how to use the product. The cleaner your product looks, the easier it will feel for the user to use it, and the easier it will feel for them to get the task done. And also, like some things some apps do is like providing like a guided tour or something like that in the beginning of when you first boot the app. Something like that can also give them like a way more understanding of how to use the app. And yes, having a clear design language when you're building an app can just like make your product, even if your product is not like very I mean, even if your product looks very simple, but if the user can understand the app just by looking at the screen, you have nailed it. You have got the UX right. So yeah, that's mostly about accessibility. It should be accessible to users. There are some additional things to accessibility. Example like screen readers, where it is useful for people who are visually impaired, or things like how we use contrast in terms of when it is helpful for people who are colorblind. But those are kind of advanced topics, so I'm not really going into it. But when it comes to accessibility, if you're really interested about accessibility, you can go and look these things up, or you can like hit me up. We can have a talk about it. Uh, so, yeah, could you please say something about scaling of a product? Right. Okay. I'll get into that. Okay. So, when we are, okay, I'll just talk about this and then I'll go to your question. Okay. And I think I can cover it here also. So, how do we know that whatever the product or whatever the user experience we have designed is good? First time when you design something, it will probably not be perfect. It will probably be really bad. And the only way to come out with a good product is testing and iterating. And that is there for all products you build if you want to build a like solid product. So once you're done with whatever you're building, once your flow is there, once your flow is strong, so then you can test it out with your users, see if they are able to perform the actions that they are meant to perform. And if there is any difficulty, how you can solve that friction, or how you can go back to that and make it easier for them to perform the task. So you go back to the design, iterate. And this is like a very repetitive process. Like you keep going iterating on things. Okay, now iterating doesn't always come when it comes to user needs, right? You don't go back and iterate always just because the user is having difficulty to solve I mean achieve a task, right? Sometimes you go and iterate on a design because maybe it's not technically feasible, maybe the tech stack you're using it doesn't allow these sorts of functionality, right? So those are also cases where you have to go and iterate on your design. Maybe the data you're trying to fetch, the DB is not sending that kind of data, or the DB cannot send that kind of data. These are like also things that will make you go and iterate on your design and a lot. And yeah, testing and iterating is how a good design comes out. So yeah. And there was a question, could you please say something about scalability of product, right? So scaling of a product, How can you make a product scalable? So first thing is like, in order to make a product scalable, you need to design a product in terms of a very modular way, right? If you design a very fixed flow or a fixed solution or a fixed path how a product is, I mean, solving a problem, then there will be problems in terms of scaling that product, right? But if your product is something which just needs to solve one problem and you do not see a lot of improvements that are coming into that product, then you do not need to think a lot of about scalability. But if you want the app to improve more in terms of like the things that the user is going to be able to do in future, then you will basically just need to design the app in a modular way. So how in a modular way? So basically, whatever element or whatever navigation you are designing, you need to make sure, okay, I'm designing this for 5 elements, but let's say things like more things come in future in my app, right? More modules are added into. So how am I going to add more modules into it? So that is where scalability comes into play. Like if you build it in a modular way, like I'm just giving an example with a navigation, right? So if you build a navigation in a modular way where you have top 3 navigation elements and then you have a more, so when you click on the more, it will go into like more things that you are putting into your app and putting into your solution down the line, as long as it is technically feasible, of course. But yeah, so these are the things. And of course, like building things in terms of component, if you are making very good components, the way you make the components, and if you make the components scalable, then it will help a lot in scaling up the product, right? If you like, I'll just give you an example of an app, right? Okay, so this is like a app hub. So there are like multiple modules of the app hub. So and you want to put be able to put a lot of modules in future, right? So you design in such a way the navigation that you have this central hub, and you can go to individual apps, you can go back to the hub, and you can go to new apps. Okay, similar things are used in like SaaS products a lot. So so whatever new app module you're trying to like add into your product, so always it goes into that app hub, and it you can scale it as much as you want in terms of how the business is growing or how you are building that solution. uh, does that answer your question? But yeah, in terms of just speaking of UX and how you're designing things, the best way to design scalably is like by designing it with components. If you design with components, scaling your solution will become like very easy. So yeah, that is almost about scalability. If you have anything, so can we say scalability equal to growth? Mm, that is depend. That depends actually. So growth in terms of what? Uh, that is the question. If you're talking about business growth, yes. Okay, I'll go into an example. Okay, the business is growing. The business wants to uh, tap into this another sector, right? So to go tap into the another sector, the business is introducing a new module into their product. So that way, so in that kind of use case, the module that you are introducing your inside your product, so your product needs to be scaled in order to fit that module. So the growth happens to the business. But yeah, scalability is directly depends on the product. Scalability, yes, scalability can impact the growth also, but yeah, scalability is directly surrounds the product. Scalability is like a very vague term for this. Like you're scaling the business, you're scaling the product, growth of our product rather. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So if you're growing your product, if you're trying to put in new features into your product, so that is when you, if you design things in a modular way, scaling your product or growing your product will become like very helpful. I can probably, yeah, talk about it for like really long, but I think we are reaching like end. So we'll just see. But yeah, you can like reach out to me if you want have like any doubts, questions regarding UX and things. So you can have a chat about it later. So yeah, that was mostly. Is it true Figma is the best? for beginners in UI. Uh, Figma is just a tool, right? So there are a lot of tools. Figma is one of the most easier to use tools when it comes to UI designing. So personally, yeah, Figma is something that I definitely prefer when it comes to UI designing. There are other tools, definitely. I will. You design UI designing can be done anywhere, but yeah, what Figma provides you and what Figma offers, it makes things way easier for any beginner breaking into UX. So yeah, we are almost done with our app journey or how we design the UX of apps. So if you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself and go ahead. Or you
Guys,
can
if
type.
anyone has something to ask, you can feel free to share it directly with our speaker. I guess the
I,
session was too good for
okay.
anyone to have any doubts.
I think no one has any doubt for now, but that is fine. Like sometimes, in order to digest the information and coming up with questions is also difficult. So I can totally understand that. So if you even have like any further questions, like about these things, about UX, about product design, about enterprise UX, app design, and anything, like you can feel free to like shoot me up and like you have you there is my Insta, or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. So we can have a discussion if you have any doubts. Would love to connect. A proper roadmap for UI UX designers for beginner. What language should we use for UI? Development perspective, I cannot give you like much input because I'm not a developer myself, but UI of Android app. So yeah, from a dev perspective, I cannot give you much input because I'm not designing them. But yeah, a proper roadmap of UI UX design for beginner. Roadmap is something like it is very personal to you, right? I so like having like a very fixed roadmap is like very difficult. If you want like a path or something, I will say learn the fundamentals. uh, Look at products, look at good products that this is how I learned UX. So look at good products, like really good products that you feel that exist in the market, both business B2C and both B2B, and look at the screens of the product, look at the flows of the product, and try to break down how the product is working, how the product might have been designed to solve the problem. And that is how you can like learn a lot in terms of UX and UI. And when you're breaking down like real world products, you learn things really faster compared to any course or something like that. So that is like a very fast way of learning. And after you're breaking down the products, after you have understood like enough maturity of that, then you can go into and like start thinking of problems that you want to solve and solve those problems. And if you get stuck in solving those problems, see that what are the like industry leading products that have similar flows and how they are dealing with those flows. That will give you like a very good insight of how you can like achieve your flows. Okay. uh, do you think that a beginner should get into field of UI UX in the era of AI? Okay, AI is going to be there. AI is going to always be there, but how we look at AI is also very important, right? So what AI is basically a tool. At the end of the day, AI is a tool that people are using to make things easier for them, and making things easier for them, making repetitive tasks be easier, because AI is learning on large language models. Like it is just like learned a lot of things from the internet that is available in the public domain, and whatever is there in the internet, it is giving you an answer, a best case average of that, right? But when you're using building something custom, when you're building a very specific solution, AI will at the end of the day give you very generalized answer. If you want something very specifically solved, as a UX designer, your ability is not your main core ability is not just designing. Your core ability lies in how you can think, and that is what makes you stand out as a designer. AI will give you a lot of things. AI will give you a lot of averages, but if you just keep compiling all the averages, you will come up with an average product. In order to think out of the box, you'll need to go back to your brain and think about things. So yeah, AI is going to be there. AI is going to definitely evolve. But when you're trying to solve problems that are very specific and realistic, then you will need to use your brain to come up with solution. As a UX designer, I just call myself a problem solver. I'm not just a designer. So that way, AI will stay. But yeah, what you will be paid for at the end of the day is how you can think, be it any field. Okay, so no, what should you say the best example of UX app? Uh, there are hundreds of good apps that have like really good user experience. You can go to Uber, you can go to Duolingo, depending on the kind of user experience you're trying to get, also, right? If you're trying to get like a gamified experience, you can go to Duolingo. If you're trying to go into like a task completion, like you have a task, for example, booking a ride or ordering a food, you can go to Uber and Swiggy. If you are trying to understand finances or how those things work, there, like I really like Grow and Cred. These are like two really good apps. So based on like the kind of like problems or the kind of things that you're interested in, like there are good apps for all of those. uh, do you send the complete UX plan to developers to make front end? Which format is UI? Okay, so once the I'll just tell you about how the handoff happens. So once the design is done, so we make the design, we make the components, we make a prototype of how this app or solution will function, and then we basically mark it ready for development, and then we hand over it to the dev. And there are instances when the dev comes to us, and there is like a lot of going back and forth in terms of like development, like because like the front end engineers are like they just know the code, right? And they know how to develop. So in any kinds of way, like they are having issues where developing, they are like having an issue in scaling the product, or like how things are breaking, so edge cases. So in those cases they will again come to you. You will design again, iterate the product for those specific solutions, and again like it's like a back and forth process, keeps going on and on. Well said. Tried searching your name on LinkedIn but couldn't find your profile. Could you please share? Yeah, sure.
I send the link in the chat box if anyone
Okay,
wants.
great. Thank you. So yeah, IRCTC, IRCTC, no comments. I have not, I do not use the IRCTC app, so don't really have much insight onto that app. But yeah, any more questions you have? No, I guess. Great.
No.
Okay, so if any one of you have like any further doubts or want to have any understanding on into any UX topic or something like that, that is like very small, or just want to have a clarification, you can shoot me up a question or hit me up, and we can talk about it. That should be fine.